Everyone has been talking about whether or not Ketel Marte will be staying with the Diamondbacks or if he'll be sent off for the mother load of pitching. Well, today we're going to see exactly what you have to say about that.
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome to the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network. I am your host, Daynen Biggs. Today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Ladies and gentlemen, today is my favorite. If you look at the segments section on the left of or on the right of your screen, and if you're just listening to this, imagine there's a segment list on the right of your screen, and the only segment is hearing from you. Today we're just going to be going through your comments, which are very interesting and have a handful of hot takes that I'm really excited to look into. So we're going to get started into that. By the way, today is a special Sunday episode because I have been really wanting to get to this, and I have a feeling next week is going to be pretty packed with news. So we're going to get to this now. And also, I didn't want to push this off. I feel like I've been pushing this episode off quite a bit. And so now it feels like the best time to do that. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. So let's go ahead and take a look real quick at our comments. Now, I am reading comments off of the YouTube videos. So if you are listening to this, or if you're listening to this on any other platform, if you go to the YouTube channel at Locked On Diamondbacks, leave a comment on any video. That's the best way to reach me. Brent Bell says, I've watched your two videos on the perfect trade for Ketel Marte. I'm a Red Sox fan. I know what I would give up for Marte, major league ready or near ready pieces that I think address holes that you are looking for. What I want to know is who you think would fit for you on the Red Sox for Marte. And it can't be something the Red Sox would reject out of hand. For example, Roman Anthony is a non-starter, and I'm pretty sure Peyton Toll and Connolly Earl would not be in the mix for Marte alone. Let's take a look real quick. I should have pre-read these comments, but let's go ahead and look at the Red Sox roster. So really, we're interested in, again, for Marte, we're interested in pitching. And the kind of what I think would be fair is an elite level pitcher, a good pitcher. And when I say elite, I'm not saying like necessarily all-star caliber, but a very good young controllable pitcher. And then a good pitcher that has a decent amount of control, a pitching prospect, and then a fielder, a position player. So, so let's go ahead and take a look at some of that. Now, the first name that jumps out to me is Aroldis Chapman, but I don't know what his contract situation is. But we can find that out real quick by going to baseballreference.com. And he is a free agent next year. So if we wanted 1 year of Aroldis Chapman, that's on the table, and the Red Sox would probably be willing to do that. I don't know that the Diamondbacks would be necessarily interested in that, though. That would be a good way to keep the D-backs in contention for the first half of the season if that was what they wanted. And then, yeah, who did you say was off the table? Let's go ahead and take your word for it there. Anthony, Toll, and Connolly Early. Oh, that's his name, Connolly Early. Obviously, I don't know. Yeah, Connolly Early, young pitcher. Yeah, I could see him being off the table for sure. Though, if they were to open with, like, if they were to say Connolly Early plus a few other maybe not so elite players, then I could see that perking the D-backs interest. But yeah, basically, yeah, you'd be looking at somebody like Garrett Crockett, I'm just looking through I could see Brian Bello being an option as well. Of course, the big thing is we're not trading Marte for rentals. We're not interested in putting, we're not in a rebuild phase, but the Diamondbacks are in a phase where they are trying to rebuild their pitching. So offensively, they're not looking for a ton of prospects there, and even prospects in pitching, we're not looking for a ton. We want MLB ready pitchers. They may not necessarily be like the best pitchers in the world. I think what it was put well was we want a bunch of Zach Gallons when we traded for him. So it was his rookie season, and he was good, but not like incredible. But he was good. He showed promise, and then he went on to become a very, very good ace pitcher. We want a bunch of those. Which obviously a team isn't going to be like quick to part with that. But Ketel Marte is the player, I think, to make that happen, And so if the Red Sox are really serious that they want Ketel Marte, then they'll kind of open up and go, okay, which of these players could we stand to part with? Now, again, I've said this plenty of times. I'll probably say this a handful of times during this episode. I don't suspect that the Diamondbacks will part with Ketel Marte because I just don't think anybody's going to offer what the Diamondbacks are looking for. So I think that's probably the most likely thing to happen. But the Diamondbacks can't really sign any pitchers because we don't have that much money. Like Lucas Giolito is probably like the highest we could possibly pay, and even still, I think he's a little bit north of what the Diamondbacks are willing to pay, especially with this Dylan Cease signing. But aside from that, yeah, like it would. Sorry, did you say Garrett Crockett was off the? I keep forgetting who you said. You did not. So yeah, Garrett Crockett would be interesting. When is his? Yeah, he's a free agent 2032. I think Garrett Crockett might actually be a fantastic main player. And then if you were to throw somebody like Garrett Crockett in, you could probably get away with throwing in like a relief pitcher or a few prospects, and then that'd be it. Like Garrett Crockett might actually be a fantastic piece for that. Now, All-Star, Cy Young, runner-up, MVP talk votes and everything. Obviously, that's a big deal, but I think Marte is worth it if you're looking to bump up your offense. If your defense is something you want to hold on to, then this probably isn't a great deal for you. But there are teams like like Kansas City where they had amazing pitching, but no offense. Something like that, I think, might be a better fit. I want to explore a little bit more into that as well. But yeah, anyway, that's probably not. That's I mean, not that I think the Red Sox would offer that, but I think if that was offered, I think the Diamondbacks would probably take something like that. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at another comment here by DJ Greg, who says, I still think Cincinnati is the best fit. I don't believe they would give up Chase Burns or Green. I do think that they would talk about Lodolo. The deal I was kicking around for Marte was for right-handed pitcher Rhett Lowder, Sal Stewart, Chase Petty, and Jose Franco. Three players that are very near or are major league ready with something to dream on with Petty. I don't think they all need to be major league ready. I think a prospect is probably something you'll have to throw, or a draft pick, something like that. But let's go ahead and look at these guys now that you bring them up. So yeah, Hunter Green probably not. That would be a shocker if that was offered. But yeah, Lowder and Franco. Let's look at Lowder and Franco real quick. If I can look at the correct page here. So we're looking at, are they on the 40-man roster? Here's Nick Lodolo, who you said was somebody they would not, or I do think they would talk about Nick Lodolo. So let's look at Nick Lodolo. So he's a free agent 2028, so a little bit of control. Had a pretty darn good season in 28 starts. He had an ERA of 3.33, WAR of 4.9. Yeah, he'd be a good one to throw into the mix for sure. I don't know that he is that like elite level that I think the Diamondbacks would need, but if you were to do him and another comparable pitcher like him, I think that would get the conversation going. And then Chase Petty, let's go ahead and take a look at him. So yeah, young, just starting out. He didn't have a wonderful season in the majors, but of course, he only played in 3 games, started 2 games. So that's nothing to worry about. In the minors, though, this guy is throwing 2025. He had a 6.39 ERA, which isn't wonderful. But in the season before that, he was throwing 1.80. Oh no, in 2 games. So Petty's somebody. Yeah, no, he's got some good stuff. He's got some promising stuff there. But again, it wouldn't ride or die on him. But it would be a good thing to throw in there for sure, which is how these trades typically work, is you throw in 1 or 2 or 3, I guess, big names, and then you throw in a few others to kind of sweeten the deal. Anyway, we're going to take a short little break real quick, and then we'll get back to your questions and comments. So stay right there. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. The NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than getting in a stadium surrounded by fans, cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle. Between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout, it's frustrating. That's why I use GameTime, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. GameTime is fast, easy, and backed by the GameTime guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. Honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB, all one word, for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download GameTime today. And we're back. And once again, I want to say thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network, as well as for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen of the day. Next comment. Now I'm gonna throw CA, who's a frequent commenter here. I'm gonna throw him out there. He's commented quite a few times on every single video, and he has, I think, a really good example of kind of like what the mindset of the fan base is. So he is very adamant. I'm assuming sorry if that's not true. Correct me in the comments if that's not true, but says, do not trade Marte. Hey, Hayes, and remember the blowback on the Goldie trade. How did those prospects turn out? Answer, horrible, with 100 exclamation points. And continue to say 90% of prospects never pan out. Marte is the best second baseman in the MLB, which I would agree with. I think that's absolutely true. And you're right. Most prospects do not pan out, including a lot of pretty much the entirety of the Goldschmidt trade. Again, there's a difference between, like, if you're comparing the Paul Goldschmidt trade and a potential Ketel Marte trade in 2025, this offseason, it's not they're not completely comparable, because Goldschmidt was traded in the last season of his contract, which basically means that he was being traded to a team as a rental. Now, they did end up renewing his contract and he stayed on that team, but they're not going to give up a ton for a player that they're only going to have for 1 year. The thing that's so incentivizing about Ketel Marte is, yes, you're right, he is the best second baseman in the MLB. He is 32 years old, which is kind of old, but also not really. He's pretty young. He's got a lot of years ahead of him still. And you'd have control of him for the next, like 4 or 5 years. So Marte, just because of his current contract, is worth way more than Paul Goldschmidt was with only 1 year of his contract. Therefore, we could expect, and this is to everybody who's saying, like, why would we pay so much for this guy? It's because you can expect a better return for a player who has multiple years of his contract, because the team is getting not a 1-year rental, they're getting a 4 or 5-year lease, I guess. And so that's a big part of why this conversation is being had at all, because if the only possibility of getting prospects back, if the only possibility was getting prospects back for Ketel Marte, we wouldn't really be that. I mean, it wouldn't be that big of news. Like, it'd be like, yeah, he's in the last year of his contract, or he's not that good, and we're gonna get prospects for him. Sure, whatever. And the Diamondbacks would be happy with that, because 10% of the prospects they'll get back will pan out, according to your stat here, and that's better than nothing. And the Diamondbacks are, that's assuming also the Diamondbacks are kind of in that rebuild phase, which when we traded Goldschmidt, we kind of were in a bit of a rebuild phase. So at least, yeah, we were in a bit of a rebuild phase, not in totally, but we were still. And so you trade for prospects when you don't have much to lose. Right now with Marte, giving up Marte, we would lose a lot. Therefore, we expect a lot in return. So I don't expect to get a load of prospects for Ketel Marte. If we do, I will be very upset. Unless we get like 30 prospects for Ketel Marte, so that we get 3 all-stars out of that, at the 90% not panning out. That I would accept, but we're if we do get anything from Marte, if we do trade him, we're getting some MLB ready players in the positions that we currently are lacking, which is pitching. All right, let's go ahead and take a look. Ryan McGowan also comment here, says, "Do your research, Crawford and Miller were blocked by players at their positions this year." Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you're right. And both project to be all-star caliber players. That is also true. Yeah. If you think you're getting the Cy Young runner-up and more for a 32-year-old second baseman, you need a reality check. And that kind of just goes back to what I was saying. Both in, like, he's 32 years old. That's not that old. And you're getting him for the next 4 or 5 years, which by the end of that contract, yeah, he will have slowed down a good bit. But players, I mean, there's nothing showing that he's not going to be productive over the next over that amount of time. I expect him to sign another contract when his contract is over. I don't think he'll be retiring when this contract is over, and he'll still be a very productive player, and you'll get a lot of production out of him in the first handful of years on top of that. So he's definitely worth it. But with the argument of like, oh, well, you want a Cy Young runner-up and, and Crawford and Miller, like, yeah, I would want that, and I would expect that if a deal were to happen. Now, how badly do you want Ketel Marte? Because if you want him, you're gonna have to give up that's kind of what you're gonna have to give up. And so the answer to me is, okay, then nobody wants him that bad, which is a perfectly, like, that totally makes sense. And I think the Diamondbacks are perfectly happy with that. If nobody wants Ketel Marte so bad that they're willing to give up that much, then there won't be a trade, and we'll keep Ketel Marte and we'll have him for the next, season and on. So, and I don't see that as a bad thing at all. I mean, a large part of me and most of the fan base, I think, hopes that happens. Hopes that that Marte stays here. So, but if something does happen, that's what it would take. So whenever we talk about that, like, oh, what would it take for us to accept a deal with the Red Sox, and we go crazy and all that kind of stuff, it's because that's what it would take in all seriousness and everything. So anyway, let's see. let's look at William William G. Atheist number 1. I had to make sure I was reading that correctly. Jays fan here, and the 4 you mentioned, in my opinion, for Marte would never happen. I would have a hard time just giving up Tiedemann and Parker for Marte. And I responded, I totally agree, which is why I'm of the opinion that a trade won't happen. The D-backs would likely be asking too much for Ketel Marte. So again, that's just what I think. If the Blue Jays are super serious about wanting Ketel Marte, then I think they would give that up. Well, they'd have to, but it would. I mean, So there you go. And then Devin said, "You savage or leave Ketel in Arizona." And then Richard responds to that, and that is leave Ketel in AZ. Jays are not trading you Savage. I don't think the Blue Jays are going to trade you Savage. That would be wild. That would be so weird. Like, that would be weird. Like, they'd be like, really? They're doing that? So again, it depends on how badly do the Blue Jays want Ketel Marte. And that being said, there is a very good chance that there are other routes for that to happen. It doesn't necessarily need to be a Savage. It doesn't even necessarily need to be, crazy good all-star pitchers or anything like that. There are plenty of different ways this could pan out. That's just the most likely that I see happening, and that includes a team basically giving up a ton of stuff in order to get him. But for teams that have the depth, the pitching depth, and can take that hit, that makes sense. For example, the Diamondbacks have that depth in their position players, in their offense. So like in their infielders, we have a ton of infielders that are very, very good. And we have a bunch of really good infielders to back them up that are prospects and young players coming up through the minors and everything. So much so that we're trying to get them to play outfield. And if we could get them to pitch, that would be even better. But we're trying to move them around because we have too many infielders. So it makes sense to say, and this is probably what's more likely to happen, leave Ketel Marte out of it. It's more likely that we'll be trading a handful of our infielder prospects to a team who needs infielder prospects, but has more than they need in pitching prospects. And so they'll be just imagine you're trading your number 1 pitching prospect for our number 1 infielder prospect. It would hurt because you're like, whoa, that's our number 1 prospect. But then you're like, oh, I guess now we have a number 1 prospect in an area that we need more. So actually, that's not bad. So that's honestly what I think. That's probably what I'm hoping for the most. And I think that's what Mike Hazen is hoping for the most as well. I think that's what everybody's kind of going on about. And then let's see, Wayne. Oh, that's right. I remember. Pronounced Wanye Kest. Sure, that's the funniest name I've ever heard. Wanye Kest commented and asked, he just signed a 6-year extension earlier this year. Am I missing something? No one extends a player and then trades him in the same year. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying. Yeah, they kind of do. It's when a player is running out of when a player's contract is running low, they're not worth as much. And so you extend the player, you give them a big extension, and now Marte is worth not just Marte this year. He's worth Marte this year. He's worth Marte next year. He's worth Marte the year after that and the year after that. And so if we trade him, whatever team is receiving Marte is getting him for all those years. Paul Goldschmidt, on the other hand, was not given an extension before getting traded. And so we traded him with only 1 year left on his contract. So the team that we were trading him for was only getting him for Paul Goldschmidt that year. And therefore, we didn't get nearly as much in return because that's all it was. That's the same with Josh Naylor. That's the same with Eugenio Suarez. And it's the same with Merrill Kelly. Had we had them on a long-term contract before trading them, we could have gotten a ton in return for them. But because it was just for 1 year, it wasn't even for 1 year, it was just for the last few months of the year, we only got a few prospects back. So when people are like, oh my gosh, we just got Lawlar, that was a terrible trade. It's no, we were probably not going to make the playoffs anyway. So let's get somebody that we'll have for the next handful of years instead of just nothing. Because Because and the other thing is, if you keep a player on your team for this season, but you're not competing, then you're essentially, and then the next year they're a free agent, you're holding on to them, and then nothing. Like, you're not getting anything for them, and then they leave, and you get nothing in return. And that's what happened, like with Shohei Ohtani with the Angels, is they could have traded him and gotten a lot for him in his last season or in that last trade deadline, but they instead decided not to hold on to him, and because they thought they could compete, they didn't, and they got absolutely nothing for him. So that's what you get. Anyway, you guys, let's get take another short little break. I hear kids and dogs outside, which means they just got home from the park. And then we'll finish things up here. So stay right there. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of a game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets to use when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Let's finish things up here with a good one, shall we? Actually, we'll just keep going. Let's see. The Godfather says, I would hate to see Marte go, but his unscheduled vacation after the All-Star break last season kind of turned off a lot of his teammates and fans. It 100% did, like, ruffle some feathers, and nothing's like confirmed, but yeah, there was some issues in the locker room, I think, for that. And Marte is, he's a personality, he's an all-star, he's a superstar, and so I think that's kind of to be expected a little bit, but at the same time, it hurts. Like, I mean, like, one of the reasons the Rockies had such a colossal downfall, not only, but in part, was because we saw Nolan Arenado on the team, and still very good, but his performance started to plummet, and the Rockies started to plummet. And apparently there were some massive issues in the locker room between Arenado and everybody else, because, you get all these macho sports guys in a room, and you have one guy who's better than the rest, and he's getting paid more, and he's frustrated, and then everybody else feels like they're not going to take it, and then they get frustrated. Like, it's a whole thing. And so with Marte, it sounds like that was kind of happening a little bit, though I can't imagine to the same extent that Arenado was. I think there were fights breaking out in the dugout, if I recall correctly. So, but by all accounts, that kind of got resolved, and everything was good, in no small part to Geraldo Perdomo. And he was able to kind of bridge the gap, make everything kind of work out a little bit better, help everything to calm down, and help to level the situation. And by all accounts, by the end of the season, the locker room was great. Now, just because things are fine now doesn't mean that things won't sour again later. And I think that's just something that's going to be expected. I mean, that's just something that is likely to happen with Ketel Marte. Not that it's excusable or okay, but also, if it doesn't happen with Marte, if it's bound to happen with other players. So that's just part of the game. Yeah, and I don't really excuse the whole just unscheduled vacation that he took. I understand why it happened, because his house did get broken into here in Arizona, and that was a tough time for him, and he went home and all that kind of stuff. So I understand why it happened. It's not excusable. It's not professional, but stuff happens, and from the sounds of it, things have cooled off and things are fine. I don't think that's going to be, and no matter what, I don't think that's a deal breaker. I don't think any of that is going to be a deal breaker with this decision making. I think if had nothing happened, I think had everything been smooth sailing, I think they'd still be listening just as much as they are now. So I don't expect that to be a big thing. Michael Armstrong said the fact that they're even listening is stupid. I disagree. I think that the fact that they're listening, one, it's a very good negotiation tactic. If they are hoping to get something, I imagine that they're like, listen, we don't want to get rid of Ketel Marte, but if it means filling all of our holes in the pitching, then maybe we would want to trade him, because then, we get all these great things. We still have plenty of offense. So that may happen. So they're like, okay, well, how do we get teams interested? Well, let's let it leak that we're listening. Let's let it leak that we're motivated, even though we really don't want to. And then once people start talking about it, we're going to come out and be like, no, 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 no. We don't want to trade him. We're listening, but we don't want to trade him. Like, it all feels kind of part of a thing to get people more interested in Marte, which I think is genius. I think they did a very good job at that. But now the question is, our team's going to bite. They've cast their line. They have real good bait. Is anybody going to bite? Are the Blue Jays going to bite? Are the Phillies going to bite? Are you going to get any other teams that are going to say, okay, we'll give up anything to have Marte? Because if they do, if there's any team that does that, we're gonna reel him in. We're gonna get as much as we can out of him, and it's going to be a great deal for us. And if nobody bites, then we'll go, all right, that's fine. We like Marte. We want to keep him anyway. So that's kind of what I'm thinking is gonna go down. Rob V says, better prepare yourselves. Marte is as good as gone. Again, disagree. I don't think he is. I think that in all likelihood, he's going to stay. I don't think we're going to lose anybody like that. Michael Armstrong also said, trade Jake McCarthy or Alec Thomas. I think we could trade either of them. I think that the Diamondbacks would be open to that. I don't think anybody really wants them. Like, I don't think anybody would really. I think they'd be good to throw in to a deal to spice things up a little bit, but I don't think anybody's being like, oh my gosh, we need Jake McCarthy. Oh my gosh, we need Alec Thomas. We'll give you anything for them. I think we'll get what we give, and both of them coming off of off years, not really having amazing production. I think Jake McCarthy might be the most likely to get a good return for, but that's why the Marte thing is so big, is because he is really the only piece we have that people would be willing to pay for. We have others, like we have prospects. We have Jordan Lawlar. I think people are still excited about him enough that they would probably pay for him. So we'll see what happens, but that's kind of what I'm thinking is going to happen. Is as far as trades go, I think we're likely going to be seeing trades from our prospects to other prospects for other prospects. And the first half of the season, we're going to kind of be scrapped for parts, for pitching, and hoping that things kind of come together. But we'll, I think that's going to be our biggest question mark, is if we're able to fill pitching enough to even to even stand a chance once Corbin Burns and Puck and Martinez come back. Anyway, guys, that's the show. This was super fun. I love reading your guys' comments, so please continue to leave them. Let me know your hot takes and your thoughts and your questions and all that kind of stuff. Be sure to follow us on X and Instagram and Facebook and TikTok at Locked On Diamondbacks. We're on YouTube as well as every other place you get your podcasts. If you want to see more of me, you can find more of my YouTube channels and projects at my website, slackshack.tv. Thank you once again for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen of every single day, and I will see you tomorrow.